And first on the agenda is roll call. Commissioner Buttleman. Here. Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Okeson.
Here.
Commissioner Peltzer.
Here.
Commissioner Redmond is here. Commissioner Sin.
Here.
Commissioner Gould.
Here.
Excellent. And welcome, by the way.
Happy to be here.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Excellent. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any changes or discussion on the agenda? Excuse me. Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. Next item, approval of the minutes from March 18th, 2019. Hopefully we've all seen and studied them from our packet. Is anybody ready to make a motion of approval of the March 18 meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve meeting minutes from our Monday, March 18th meeting as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion items or issues with that? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from March 18? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have one abstention.
Yep.
Commissioner Okeson. All right. Next item, new business, new member orientation. We have a wonderful new member, which is fantastic to flush out our ranks. And I think, Sean, did you want to go through the new member orientation packet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I'll just briefly touch on this. So we wanted to welcome our newest member, Joe Gould. Joe was appointed to the Environmental Natural Resources Commission in March by our city council. He'll be taking over Ryan Reese's position. Ryan, of course, resigned after a 3-year term last year. And Joe's term will then expire in 2021, September 2021. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
And for our new members, I do like to just kind of give you a little bit of background. Joe and I met for an hour beforehand, and Joe and I had actually worked together on our Rice Larpenteur project. So Joe sat in on the community advisory group for that. So Joe and I had known each other, and so I'm glad to have you here as well. So I know this is redundant for our current commissioners, but I'll just touch on a few things. So the Environmental Natural Resources Commission actually started out as a committee in 2004. The city council formed it as an ad hoc committee responsible for advising the city council and other commissions and boards on matters relevant to the environment. Because that committee was actually doing such great work, the commission formed an actual ordinance which created the commission that you're currently on, and that was back in 2006. So since that time, the Environmental Natural Resources Commission has been doing a lot of great work with our solid waste program, our urban agriculture, renewable energy, so just a whole host of things. Wetland ordinance, great work and a real asset to the city. The purpose, as written in the ordinance, is to establish environmental priorities and to propose changes necessary to existing environmental ordinances which ensure that the city's environmental assets are protected, preserved, and enhanced. A couple other things to go over. This commission actually adopted rules of procedure, so I included those for your information, Joe. And the last time those were updated were March 8th. They were approved by the City Council. The Environmental Commission looked at them last year, but those changes have not been approved by our council yet. And the rules kind of goes into the chair and vice chair and how those are elected each year. Currently, we have Ted Redmond as our chair for 2019 and Molly Miller as our vice chair. Annually, the commission does put together a report for the city council, and that details actions and activities for the previous year and goals for the new year. And I did give you a copy of the Environmental Commission annual report. The city council had reviewed that during their State of the City event in January. And it does detail what the commission accomplished last year, which I think one of the highlights is the adoption of the urban agriculture ordinance amendments, which promotes local foods and reduces barriers to that within our city. These meetings are cablecast live, and then you can also stream them online. And a good source of information, of course, is the city's website, www.maplewoodmn.gov. And then, just with that briefing, I wanted to formally welcome you, Joe, to the Environmental Natural Resources Commission. And we look forward to working with you on ensuring the city's environmental assets are protected, preserved, and enhanced. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time tonight.
And welcome again. And as long as you're here, let's buttonhole you a little bit. And just so you know, in the handout, there's the temporary committees. We do actually, each year we've been identifying subcommittees, and you can feel free to participate in one if you'd like, or more than one. Our subcommittees can only have up to 3 commissioners, but I think they all have only 2 at this point. Is that correct? And as I recall, we have 4 committees right now. One is helping out with the trash and recycling RFP, which we'll be talking about. The second is energy. The city has, as you probably may know from looking through the comp plan, we have energy reduction goals and greenhouse gas reduction goals. And so that committee is going to be kind of talking a little bit about that. And we have a budget subcommittee. And is that, am I missing one? Oh, and accessibility. Oh, yeah. Which was somewhat broadly defined, but looking at things like sidewalks and broader accessibility sorts of issues. So you don't have to sign up, but I just wanted to make you aware of them, and if you're interested, we can chat about that later. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Sean. Next up is unfinished business. Maplewood residential curbside trash and recycling request for proposals. And again, we'll turn over to Sean to drag us along here in our leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I don't have to drag you along. This stuff is interesting. Yeah.
I meant because you're always out in front of us. You're always helping us.
Oh, okay.
With your leadership.
It was a compliment.
Yes,
Thank you
it
so
was.
much.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tonight we will be talking about the trash and recycling request for proposal. And I do have a presentation for you, and I would like to briefly go over that. So first, I just wanted to touch on, I know we went over this during our last meeting. Currently in the city of Maplewood, we do have an organized trash hauling system. It's with Republic Services is our contractor for trash hauling. They are currently under a 2-year extended contract. They were the ones that received the contract when the city first organized trash hauling back in 2011. Prior to that, the city of Maplewood had 9 residential trash haulers that were, coming and going down any street during day certain trash pickup collection days. And now, for the last 7 years, we have had this organized system. And the contract is currently a 2-year extended contract, and that ends December 31st of this year. They do curbside collection of single-family residential homes, that's 4 or less units, and then manufactured and townhome developments can opt into the program. And the reason for that, at the time of organizing our trash hauling, it was determined that these developments are already somewhat organized because, of course, they usually have a contract with one hauler, so they didn't have the issue with several haulers coming up and down their street. But these developments can opt in, and since that time, I think, we have about 4,000 of those manufactured in townhomes. Is that right? I shouldn't quote that, I'm not sure. But we've had about, I would say, maybe 3 of those developments opt in. The one issue I think that is holding some of them back is the ordinance was written that once they opt in, they can't opt out. So that's something maybe we want to look at in the future, but that's actually written in the ordinance, the solid waste ordinance. They do collect trash, yard waste, and bulky items curbside. The yard waste is subscription-based, so you can purchase that for weekly collection throughout the season. And then the bulky items, that's on a per-call basis, so you could just call in and have like an appliance picked up for a fee. The city supplies the carts in 4 sizes, and Republic Services manages the carts. So these are the carts that you'll see out in the city. They're black, City of Maplewood carts. These carts are actually 50% post-consumer waste. That's why they're that black in color, because they're mixing together all sorts of different carts. So that's why we chose those. The city, again, we supply that in 4 sizes, a 20-gallon, which is pretty unusual for trash service. So it's a real small container. It's actually a 32-gallon cart with like an insert inside. And then we also offer that every other week for really low generators of waste. And then there's the 35, 65, and 95-gallon. And then in this service, Republic Services does the billing. Because the City of Maplewood, we do not do utility billing. We don't manage the water system within the city. That's St. Paul Regional Water Services. So when we put out the RFP for this trash hauling, we did require that the hauler do the billing. So they're doing the billing just for the trash. And the trash collection rates range from $9.78, that's for that 35-gallon, up to $14.66 per month, depending on the cart size. And those fees include the 75-cent cart fee that the city charges to pay for those carts that we had purchased, and then all taxes. So it's really the lowest rates that you'll see in the metropolitan area right now here in the city of Maplewood. The recycling program, our contractor is currently Tennis Sanitation. They have a 2-year extended contract also that ends December of 2019. They actually have had the recycling contract prior to the city organizing our trash. I think they started with the city back in 2010. They do curbside collection of single-family residential homes and centralized collection at multifamily homes. And that collection of recycling at the multifamily homes, that began probably 5 years or so ago. So that's something new, and that program has been really successful. However, we're currently using recycling carts, which has been a challenge for some of the larger multifamily developments, as you know, they'd prefer like a large recycling dumpster. So that's something we can look at in our new contract. They also allow churches and small businesses to opt in. I should say the city allows them, churches and small businesses, to opt into the recycling program. Of course, if it's similar to a residential home, because they utilize a cart. So we would allow them to opt in. And they do single sort recycling. It all goes into one container. And Tennis actually supplies the carts for our recycling program, and those are in 3 sizes. And Tennis Sanitation charges the cities, currently under this contract, $2.86 per household per month. But the city sets the recycling fee and currently charges $3.54 per household per month, and that is tacked onto the water bill. St. Paul Regional Water Services allows the city to add some fees that we would normally charge if we did utility billing, but they do charge the city when we each bill. I think for that recycling fee, they charge us 13 cents per bill, so that can add up. But the city uses that extra income for funding the actual recycling program. So that's our current program. And the city council, we went before them for a workshop in January, and they authorized city staff to release a request for proposal for new contracts rather than just negotiating with the current haulers, which of course we could have done. But it has been 7 years now since we've organized our trash hauling, and in the current contract with Republic Services, it was actually written in there that future, after the contract ends, the city would go out for regular procurement, but that was kind of a policy question that we posed to our council to see if they wanted to continue with that. Again, the reason for that was when we did organize, we did have those 9 residential haulers, and it was an attempt to, open that up again, open up the city to all the haulers, because of course we organized under one hauler. So that was the reasoning back then. And so we'll follow through with that and put out this request for proposal. And we have both infrastructure, the solid waste consultants for Ramsey County. They're actually drafting the RFP for the city of Maplewood. This service is free to the city as part of the recycling program and our SCORE grant and so forth. So I have not even seen the draft RFP, but I have an outline here that the Environmental Commission will review tonight and give some policy review and feedback, and then that'll go then to the council. So I'm going to go into some of the details on the proposed RFP, some changes to our current contract. So the RFP is currently written, so it would be a 5-year contract. And I think one thing we want to look at is the possibility of actually writing into the contract extensions. I noticed that wasn't in the outline that they currently supplied us with, so that might be something you want to comment on. There'll be 2 alternates. I say I have alternate, but 1, 2, and 3. And so the haulers can put in proposals for one or all of these. So one proposal would be to pick up the trash and recycling. So then the city of Maplewood will only have 1 hauler doing both of those. Alternate 2 is just the trash, and alternate 3 is just the recycling. So we will likely get all 3 proposals from some haulers, and there is one hauler in particular that does only recycling currently. Some changes that we're proposing in a new contract. We'd really like to look at our collection zones. Currently, the city of Maplewood allows for trash and recycling collection in 5 what we call day certain routes. So you can see that's Monday through Friday. And it's always been a challenge for our Friday route residents. When we initiated this years ago, had concerns about, especially summer months, putting your trash out on a Friday morning and then going off to the cabin or wherever and not being able to bring that cart back. So that's been a bit of a concern for the Friday routes. So looking at the routes for efficiencies, maybe we could reduce that down to 4 routes. So that'll be something that we're looking for in a proposal, how we could do that. For the recycling, as I stated, the city of Maplewood owns the trash carts. Now, we're looking at the feasibility of the city purchasing recycling carts. And the reason we'd really like to take a close look at that is Ramsey County offers a grant for cities to purchase carts. So it would fund up to 50% of the carts. And the estimate currently is for 12,000 carts at $55 per cart, you're looking at $660,000. Well, if the county picks up half of that, $330,000, that's quite a bit of leveraged funds that the city really should consider. So that's something that we'd like to look at. We have to do a little bit more research and also gauge the city council on, their appetite for purchasing carts. And we'll do that at this next workshop with them. And would also like to hear your feedback on that. The bundled contract, again, option to do the recycling billing. That would just be under the scenario where a hauler has both the trash and recycling, because under the trash hauling, they have to do the billing because we can't add the trash fees to the water bill. That's just not possible. People are always changing cart sizes and it's different pricing. So under a bundled contract, the hauler could actually do the recycling billing, and the city then would save that income that we're currently spending 13 cents per bill, adding it on to the St. Paul Regional Water Services billing. Do some programming to ensure that more small business and charitable organizations are able to opt into the program. Right now, it's just kind of a voluntary thing, and we're trying to do a lot of promotion with that. But right now, I think we have maybe only 7 businesses that are opted in. Recycling dumpsters instead of recycling carts at some multifamily properties. I touched on this. I was at a property today where they have 103 units, and they have a recycling chute and a trash chute on each floor. So the residents can just put the recycling, they don't have to walk too far to do this. But it has to collect it in a dumpster enclosure. And then if you were to have carts, rolling out probably 15 to 20 carts for that amount of people can be challenging. So we will have some pricing options for the carts. And I think that'll help in many situations increase recycling rates at some of our multifamily developments. And then multifamily recycling charged by cart or dumpster, not dwelling unit. And that's something I'm not sure how this will go over, but currently the contractor charges us per household per month. So especially in these multifamily units, if you have 100 units, but you only have 20 carts out there, the city is being charged quite a bit of money. But at the same time, if they're bidding on just for the carts or the dumpsters, maybe that you're not getting as good of a deal. It's something to analyze anyway. Then moving on to the trash, some new approaches here. Right now we host a fall cleanup campaign every fall where our trash hauler offers reduced price curbside bulky collection, and that's in the month of October. And we started that, I think, a year into our trash hauling contract as part of our trash hauling work plan. We require the hauler and the recycler to submit a work plan, some innovative approaches that might increase recycling, reduce waste, and this was one thing that we worked with Republic Services on. And they've been doing it, but each year the reduction in that bulky item has gone down. Initially everything was 50% off. Now there's a few items that are 50% off. So really memorializing that in a contract and how that would work is something that we'd like to look at, as well as the spring cleanup. Every year we host the spring cleanup at Aldrich Arena, and residents can, of course, drive in their bulky items and dispose of those or recycle them. And for many years now, we just contract with, we get proposals from various contractors. So we'd like to actually memorialize that in the contract so we're not always going out for those spring cleanup bids. City buildings and parks included in the contract. Right now, Tennis Sanitation collects our recycling in the parks and city buildings as part of the contract, so it's not an added fee, and that's something we were able to negotiate back when they came to the city and we created that contract. But that's not something that we had in the trash hauling contract, because at the time that we had organized trash, the city of Maplewood had a contract with Waste Management for our city facilities, and we couldn't break that. It was a 5-year contract. So now that's something we'd like to look at including for the trash hauling. Planning for curbside organics collection. So right now the county is working on a plan for creating an infrastructure for curbside organics collection. And they think it's 2022 is when that might roll out. And the current plan is for residents to place organics in a durable compostable bag, and that bag would then be placed in with your trash. And then the trash hauler would tip it on a floor at the Energy Center in Newport, and then those organics bags would be separated. So that's something that they're working on. And so that would roll out during the term of this contract. So we really want to make sure we have some language in there that outlines that programming. Phased-in pay-as-you-throw pricing schedule. So the pay-as-you-throw is an opportunity for the city to reduce waste by having more variable in the pricing. So a 95-gallon cart, as an example, would be $20, and a 35-gallon cart would be, I don't know, $6. So you can see that a large variation in pricing. So it really encourages residents to go with the smaller cart and reduce waste that way. And we want to phase this in during the term of the contract because, of course, our residents over the last 7 years have been familiar with the current pricing, which is 95, 65, 35. There's only about $1 difference between the cart sizes. So we don't really want to have that big shocker. But maybe year one, you start a mini phase and each year thereafter. So that's one of the biggest things, I think, biggest changes you'd see in this contract. So I outlined several other items in your staff report, but don't need to go into detail on every single thing. But I did want to touch on the next steps. So the City Council will hold a workshop on April 22nd where we'll go over this outline and get additional policy feedback, and they'll look at your recommendation as well. And then I don't have the exact timeline up here. We're still working on those details. But generally speaking, that draft RFP would be complete by FOTH and city staff and go back to the City Council. They'll authorize the release of the RFP. We'll have maybe a month to 6 weeks where the haulers then can formulate their proposals and submit them. There'll be a due date. Then our proposal review team will complete review and rankings. And on that review team, we did last meeting put together the solid waste subcommittee, which I think, excuse me, I misspoke before. There are 3 members on that subcommittee. It's Commissioner Miller, Palzer, and Sin. And you'd be involved in those rankings of those proposals. The city, and then as well as maybe 2 members from the City Council and city staff and 1 county staff. The City Council would then approve the rankings. We'd work on a draft contract and bring that before the council, and they'd authorize that, and then the new contract would begin. Currently, the date is January 1st, 2020. So that's the next steps on this RFP process. So for tonight, we are asking that you discuss this draft residential curbside trash and recycling RFP outline and provide further policy advice and direction as needed. So I will stand for questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sean. I have a question about, actually I have a number of questions, but I'll just start with 1 or 2 and then we'll go around the room here. But the pay-as-you-throw, so we currently have different pricing levels for the different sized bins, but the pricing structure is regressive. In other words, the 20-gallon trash container, you're paying more per gallon of trash than you are for the 90-gallon trash container. So is the idea that the pay-as-you-throw would either make it equitable cost per gallon, or are we going to go to a progressive system? Do we have an idea of what that might actually look like? So in other words, so right now if I have a 90-gallon, I'm getting a deal because the trash I'm throwing, I'm paying 16 cents per gallon. As opposed to if I have a 20-gallon one, I'm paying 50 cents a gallon. Is the intent that we would slowly ratchet up the larger sizes until they're all at 50 cents or at 40 cents or some constant cost per gallon? Or even further, saying that I'm going to pay X cents for 20-gallon tank garbage and X plus something for a 90-gallon, so it's really progressive.
More progressive. I have not seen the proposal,
Okay.
and I must say I'm not that familiar with pay-as-you-throw scenarios, but certainly a variable that would be more in line with the price per gallon, like you're referring to.
Yeah. Yeah, because usually, I mean, the best way to do it is by weight, but we don't really have the capacity to do
Right.
that right now.
So if you have comments on how that pay-as-you-throw might work, how you'd like to see it roll out,
Okay.
that would be beneficial.
Well, my opinion is at the very least, because right now you're getting a discount at 90 gallons, that's got to stop. At the very least, keeping the same cost per gallon would increase, so if you use the 20-gallon cost, you'd now spend $45 a month instead of $15 a month for the 90-gallon tank, right? So that alone would be a progressive change. That's not very progressive, it's just more progressive than what we've got right now. Oops.
Yes, and that's the intent of that pay-as-you-throw.
I was just gonna say it'd be really cool if then the people who are doing the smallest one every other week would be free.
There you go.
Just
Yeah,
saying.
one price can go up, the other one can go down.
Yep.
There you go.
Just a comment on the concept that you're proposing there, and I think we should be aware of it. I'm not advocating one position or another, but if right now a person using a household using a larger bin is paying more or is paying less, and this change would make them pay more, that might discourage them from recycling. And that's something we should consider, if that's an effect that might somehow damage our entire recycling effort.
These would be the prices for the trash bin, not the recycling bin. So the recycling bins would still be a flat rate at whatever value. Right now, that's, I don't know, what, $5 a month or something?
The city of Maplewood charges $3.54 for recycling, no matter what size cart you have
Yeah.
currently.
So
Sorry, I
So
misunderstood.
this proposal would keep,
You were proposing.
the dollar value might change based on whatever the proposals we get back are, but we're still thinking that the recycling would stay at a flat rate, but trash would be somehow moving it towards a progressive system so that you pay more for more, you save more for throwing less. You know what I'm saying?
Correct, so that would encourage recycling, is the theory,
Yeah.
because
Kinda like
you're
pay for
trying to
your
keep as
carbon
much as you can out of the trash, because you have a smaller bin now.
Yeah. I feel like it's a somewhat sensitive thing to try to figure out, because this committee, I'm sure we're all concerned about, we want to increase recycling, we want to decrease landfill or even waste energy. I'd rather see things recycled or reduced first. But as I see it, there's two potential issues that could come about based on however this rolls out. One is if we start encouraging people to just throw their trash into the recycling,
Yeah.
we've killed the recycling. So we need to be careful about that. And the other is the reality that, if you're a family of 4 or 5, you're probably using a 90-gallon container almost regardless. Maybe you can reduce it, I sure hope. But we don't want to be progressive in terms of trash and end up being regressive in terms of social equity. So I just think we need to figure out how to be careful about that so that we're progressive environmentally and progressive in terms of social equity as well. I don't know what that is, but I think maybe the committee can think on that a little bit. Commissioner Sin?
Mr. Chair, perhaps we should look at, in this particular issue, look at what other cities are doing, to find out if they've been doing this for a while and see what's out there. And then the committee can look at that, but I'm just saying, it would be helpful to look at other cities.
That's a superb idea. Commissioner Pelzer?
I think my main comment, I'm thinking about this and thinking historically, we, as a commission, were really frustrated a few years back when the cart determination was made. We were recommending that the city purchase the carts for recycling, and that didn't happen, and ended up being Tennis Sanitation owns the carts. So I'm concerned if we're switching haulers, I'm sure that Tennis will be, I guess reasonably sure that Tennis will be bidding on the new contract to continue recycling, which would be great, but I would want to make sure that we're not causing a lot of cart waste like as we're looking at purchasing carts for the city, that we're not purchasing carts that then make those, the ones that were just purchased 3 years ago obsolete, for the recycling carts that are tennis colored and branded and all that kind of thing. And just concerned in general about, adding 12,000 new plastic items into the city. So making, if there's possibility of adding some comments in or prioritizing, that they're made as much as can be the high recycled content. And, if maybe there's something that could be worked out with tennis to purchase their carts and somewhat rebrand them or recolor, to consider and minimize waste as much as we can with that. We kind of saw that coming, but frustrating that we didn't do that a few years ago when the opportunity arose, so.
That's, I think, a fantastic point, and that also relates to sort of our carefulness about how we may or may not structure progressive pricing systems, because we start off with the contract, and if we have a continued regressive system where I'm not very mindful of my 90-gallon trash can, but in 3 years, we're now progressive, and I'm much more aware, and I realize, hey, I don't have to throw that much stuff. I can rejigger my life and get it down to a 40-gallon or whatever. Being careful that we don't end up with a whole army of 90 gallons that now in a couple of years are, we don't know what to do with.
Yeah, the nice thing about owning them is that we can shuffle around, but there is still, as that skews more towards hopefully smaller carts, that you then have the larger carts that are not able to be used. I'm curious to see, I guess, I don't know that it's a comment that's necessarily relevant right now, but it just seems like the recycling industry is changing, just as far as global economy, and I'm not an expert in that by any means, but the China is not as willing to take those materials for recycling anymore, so I worry that we'll see from our recycling hauler, fewer items that can be recycled, and then we have more waste, so then the cart size and the recycling, or the trash that's being thrown, increases a little bit over the next few years. So I'm curious if we'll see, different rates, or, through the timeline of these contracts, see variable rates and an increase over time too. So concern, but I think we'll have to see on that.
Yeah, just a brief comment on something that hopefully we can preserve with the next contract, is that option flexibility to increase your cart size with the recycling without an additional cost. I think that incentivizes people to recycle maybe for the first time, to kind of figure out how much they really are recycling. I know our household, we recycle on average 5 times as much as we throw away in a week. And, we figured out that we needed to increase that. I think it was the smallest or second smallest size recycling container. And it was nice to get a bigger one without an additional cost. So if we could keep that alive going forward, I think would be nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's fantastic. Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions, actually. Do we own any of the dumpsters? Is one of my questions. And is that a possibility? We were talking about there's so many carts for the multifamily dwellings, and some of them would have the dumpsters. Do we have, option for that too?
I'm working with Ramsey County to see if the grant would cover the dumpsters, so then we would own the dumpsters as well.
Okay. And then my other concern is that I would be kind of wary of buying carts when we may be changing the style, if we add organics, or if, you know what I mean? If you don't want to have a whole bunch of carts that then they can't use because they have changed their way of dumping or something, if we purchase more, or for the other recycling as well. So that was just another thing that I thought of, because if we add it to curbside pickup, I know they were talking about possibly adding something on the side of the recycling bin, or having, I can't imagine, we are having 2 bins already per household, and if we have 3, 1 is organics, or, tying in a bag, like you said, or putting it in. But if they decide to change the shape or the process of the cart, we don't want to end up with a whole bunch that are not usable. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah,
Although I
good-
really
Good
think
points, but they are currently planning for that,
the bag.
the bag in the trash cart.
Okay. And then I really want to make sure that, I think that adding the spring cleanup is really important, and then making sure that we have some sort of written intent for keeping it at, 50% off or whatever in the contract. I think that's really good. I really like that point. And then the researching the similar cities for what they do per pound, I think was a great idea as well.
Sean, I have a few items just to throw out. The first is item K under some number, under 7, proposed new things. Item K, we're talking about the route and allowing them to go to Monday through Thursday if that's an option is a better value to the city residents. I have 2 comments related to that. The first is that I'd like to suggest that we define better value in terms of cost and/or environmental impact. Having trash trucks out, I mean, compared to all the vehicles on our roads, it's a small impact, but still it's something that we can influence. So reducing garbage truck traffic and gallons consumed reduces our impact, so that's something that has value. So I personally would value that just as much. If the cost is the same, but we reduce our emissions, hey, that's a good thing. The other comment I have is that, if offering them an option to go to 4 days versus 5 days, why not just make it an option for them to tell us however many days is the most efficient for them? And related to that, I do perceive a challenge that it's easy to do under the bundled option where you're controlling both trash and garbage. I'm not really sure how you're going to handle it with trash and garbage separate, but that's something that I'm sure the RFP committee can magic out of this deal. But I feel like if you're going to offer them an option, just let them tell us what they think is cheapest and least environmental impact. And then I'm going to skip through a couple of comments, but down towards then under, I have a few other ideas related to changes. The first is, we require an annual report. I'm assuming we're going to still continue to require an annual report. I don't recall, and I could be wrong, but I don't recall on that same topic that we require them to report gallons of fuel consumed by type, and I think we should do that. So that annually they're reporting, whether it's diesel or natural gas or whatever they're running their trucks on, that they report fuel usage for the year. For the recycling report, again, I don't think we do this. If we do, I'm sorry I'm wrong, but if we don't, I would love to see them report on the final disposition of the recycling contents by volume. How much of it actually got recycled? How much of it ended up in a landfill? How much did it end up waste energy? How much ended up being reused but not recycled? Even estimated would be good, so that we at least get a better handle on how effective our recycling is. And frankly, I think as the metro area starts ratcheting up our GHG emission protocols, we're going to start wanting to know those things, I think, too. Okay, yeah, and I think that comment's kind of already been covered. Anybody else? Commissioner Sin?
Yeah, to go along with that, Commissioner, on 6I, that's current, it's talking about the recycling contractor will arrange for processing and marketing sources of all recyclables. I'm just wondering, whoever we choose for recycling, it would be nice to know what their marketing sources are, because they're probably different, and that could have an impact on how much recycling gets done. I think you were talking about that. And I'm just saying that this just kind of puts everything on the recycling contractor to process, market, everything. And it would be nice to know before we hire somebody what their marketing sources are, if they have enough. Otherwise, that might give us an idea if we want to select a particular company or not.
That's a great point. Or maybe in addition to that, what sort of partnerships they have in place or they anticipate, you know? Because the MPCA, I know, has some programs that they've been starting up in the last couple of years trying to help increase recycling. You know, do they have an inroad in some programs? Do they have other partners locally or internationally or something like that that they're using? So that would be,
Because to me, one of the most important things of selecting a recycling contractor is what their sources of marketing to make sure that it really does get to where we hope it goes to.
yeah.
Mr. Chair, also, this item was getting at revenue share, so you can put in your contract that a city wants a certain amount of revenue share. We used to have this when we had Eureka as a recycling contractor, and the city would get a certain percentage of all the revenue earned for recycling the materials. For a couple of years, we were getting maybe about $80,000 a year, something like that. But now the recycling markets are quite low, so it's not something we're proposing in this, but that's kind of what this is getting at, is revenue share versus the recycler kind of taking all the risk. We did propose the revenue share, as Commissioner Paulsner pointed out, during a term of the tennis contract. We had written in there the opportunity to roll out carts because we are collecting recycling in the bins, the bins that you would carry out to the curb. And we knew that we were going to roll out carts, but we didn't know how we were going to do it. There was two options, the city purchasing the carts or the hauler supplying the carts. And we had that grant opportunity too. City of Maplewood was actually the first city in the county to apply for a grant to have the county cover the cost of the carts. So since that time, they've opened it up to other cities. But at any rate, the city council at the time decided to have the hauler supply the carts, and we did not purchase the carts. And this was, I don't know, 5 years ago or so, something like that. And in the contract, we had written, if the city purchases the carts, the hauler will share 70% of the revenue. So that was an opportunity that we were looking at back then. And with the purchase of the carts, normally, and maybe it's not always how it works, but when a contractor rolls out carts in a city for an organized system, they usually amortize the price of the carts over the term of the contract. So the carts that we purchased for trash hauling, we paid off within 7 years. It was purchased with a utility bond, and those carts will be paid off this year, actually. But a contractor will pay for all their carts, over like a 5-year period. So, the city, it's better value to purchase your own carts because you're not amortizing it over just that 5 year and paying for someone else's carts. And then when they're not your hauler anymore, they take the carts and leave. Anyway, that's one of the reasons to purchase carts.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for your comments about the market resources, though that was very good. But I did want to point out that this also kind of gets at the revenue share piece.
Mm-hmm. Related to that, so our current structure, we do have whatever it is, 68 cents or whatever per unit on the recycling that is retained by the city that helps defray costs and so forth. That's correct, right? Something like 68 cents.
For the trash hauling, 75 cents per month to pay for the trash carts, is that what you're referring to?
No, for under recycling,
Oh, where
what
the
is it?
city sets the rates.
yeah, the
Right.
city sets the rates of $3.54, and currently tennis charges $2.86, so there's some 65 cents or something per unit that turns into a little bit of revenue for the city, which is appropriate because we expend effort related to this. Do we have a similar fee retention related to trash? So there's this 75-cent cart fee. Does that go to the city, or does that go to the trash?
So that's something that we'll have to analyze further. When you do have an organized system, it is an opportunity for creating some revenue. However, when we organized the trash hauling, we wanted to ensure the prices. That was the top goal back then. So we really set that cart fee at exactly the amount that we needed to pay off that utility bond. So after this year, that 75 cents per cart, we'll need to come up with a plan for cart replacement, because we'll always need replacement carts. We still have to purchase carts on occasion. So we'll need a plan for funding that, but maybe it's not 75 cents. Maybe we can reduce that, or does the city, is one of the policy directions that we want to create a little revenue with our trash hauling system? And I think that's something that we really need to review with our council.
My personal opinion is it seems like we should definitely explore generating a little revenue. I mean, it doesn't have to be, ridiculous. It doesn't have to be onerous to residents, but I personally, as a resident, wouldn't mind having another quarter or so a month go to the city if it helps generate a fund that can help us continue to do good work, and maybe make sure that our recycling gets actually recycled, where we can actually be a participant in that somehow. I think having a little bit of resource helps us cover some of the work that we're trying to do. I have one more question, then I see Commissioner Miller. Or one more item. When I brought up the whole issue related to gallons of fuel used, I realized that the other comment was actually for the proposal itself to require them to submit not only their costs, but based on their proposed routes and their vehicle fleet, what is their estimated fuel usage per year by type? Again, so that if you end up with two that are essentially the same, equal, but one's illustrating, saving 40% fuel, maybe that's a better value than somebody that isn't. So I'd like to suggest that's in there. Commissioner Miller, did you have something?
Yeah, actually, I just was thinking that it might be a good idea after we look at the RFPs, if we take into account the little bit of revenue that we circle back with the budget subcommittee, just so we can, because I think the whole point of that was that then we have some money to do some things a lot more proactive and future thinking. So I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it seems like a good overlap there. Any other comments or questions? Sean, do you kind of have what you were hoping for out of this?
Yes, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Sean. All right, next item, item 7, visitor presentations. Any presentations from our visitors? Extra credit opportunities? You don't have to, just the opportunity, that's all. Okay. We'll move on. You can always do it in the future, though. We will recognize you in the future. Okay, any commissioner presentations? I don't think we have any this evening. Staff presentations.
Mr. Chair, may I suggest maybe an update on the environmental event that went on? I'm sorry, I forget the name.
Oh, that,
It was on
yes.
Saturday. I'm putting you on the
Awesome.
spot.
Yeah. Commissioner Buttleman, did you attend?
I
Who
did.
all was able to go there?
I did.
Thank you.
Okay.
That'd be helpful, thank you.
It was a very interesting and I think worthwhile thing to attend. It was primarily from commission groups like this from all over the metro area, and a number of them from outside the metro. And it seemed to me it was evenly distributed between professional staff, such as Sean, and members such as ourselves. And the point of it was to share information about different issues and how different cities have dealt with those issues. We talked about, the part I was there for was to talk about effective residential outreach, and there were other sessions on effective business outreach and then effective youth engagement. For the residential outreach, talked about the, it was the, let's see, what did we call it? The Energize Maplewood Residential Energy Challenge of several years ago, and then the more recent Re-Energize Maplewood, the modern version of that, and basically a simple summary of how that has worked. And while it was on very small scale, it did demonstrate that if you take the right steps, you can get people involved. And that's a good lesson. And others from other cities had similar stories to tell.
Did you, I went to that last year. I thought it was really great too. Hopefully it happens again next year, but did any other cities share projects that they're working on now that struck you, or successes that you heard about that struck you at all?
Yes. I did not take copious notes, but I did take a few. Trying to, and my handwriting was very bad. There was, one of the things that struck me was that a couple of outstate communities were doing things, were taking more, I don't want to say more seriously than we are, but at least as equally as serious as communities in the Twin Cities are. And I sort of didn't expect that, but I'm not sure why I wouldn't have. But anyway, that was reassuring to see that. There were issues like city having no database on energy use, and the Chamber of Commerce for businesses in that city was not interested in providing that. It seemed like maybe it would be detrimental to the businesses to give away some of their secrets. But then Xcel Energy had all that information and was glad to provide it. And so looking for more than one source for the same bit of information was a good lesson there. Don't give up after just the first no. Go somewhere else and maybe you'll find it easier. There were a number of things like that shared in the formal presentations, but a lot more just at table talk.
Well, thank you very much for attending for us. I appreciate it. Any other questions? Okay. All right, on to staff presentations.
Thank you. A few items to announce. The spring cleanup is scheduled for May 11th this year at Aldrich Arena from 8 a.m. until 1 p.m. And this is, of course, an opportunity for our residents to bring their bulky items that are difficult to dispose or recycle at the curbside. And we usually have about 300 to 500 vehicles that come through on a spring cleanup. And we're always looking for volunteers, the city council and environmental commissioners to help out, meet and greet people at the gate. So if you're available, I will send an email and ask for, or I'll let you know about this volunteer opportunity. And then our communications department put together a really fun video. It's about two or 3 minutes here, but I wanted to play it for you because it really shows you how much fun it is to even just be there and volunteer and all the good work that we're doing. So I will put that on the overhead here. 1 second. Good morning. Nice balancing act. What type of items do you have, Sue? It's a great way to help our residents, responsibly reuse, recycle. Some of it, of course, gets disposed. Loving it. It does take a lot of people to make it happen, but I think it's well worthwhile. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You're a star, Sean.
It's hard to see yourself close up like that after a grueling day of work, but. So come on out, May 11th. The next item is the Waterfest event, and I have a flyer here to show you. Oh, bear with me. Now you know my password. Okay, here we are. I will, So Waterfest, this is a fun-filled free family day at Waterfest at Lake Phelan, and this is sponsored by the Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District. This year it'll be held on Saturday, June 1st from 11 a.m. until 4 p.m. This is their 20th year holding this great event, and each year the Environmental Commission and our Nature Center have a booth at the Waterfest event, and we're hoping your commission can come up with the theme and help create another successful booth. And we're always, again, looking for volunteers to man the booth during that day, and that's another really fun event. We usually have 2 shifts, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, so I'll send you out that volunteer opportunity as well, and we should get some ideas for a theme, because that's just around the corner. They always like to know what our theme will be a few weeks prior to the event, because they have a passport game that they play. Families can visit various booths and ask like a environmental theme-related question, and then you stamp the passport, and once they get all the passports stamped, they turn that in for a prize. So they always like to know what the theme is a couple weeks in advance. Last year, we focused on our Re-Energize Maplewood program, and that was one of the ways that we did outreach. This is a good opportunity because they get, I forget what the overall attendance is, but it's in thousands. And then finally, Nature Center programming. Of course, the Maplewood Nature Center, they are our partner in environmental education, and I have 2 programs, and I was wondering if perhaps the ENR Commission could read those. I didn't print them out. There's 2. So I'll pull those up here.
It's a black screen. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, okay. Tremendous Arbor Day celebration, Saturday, May 4th, from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at the Maplewood Nature Center. All ages, families, and adults. Join us in a celebration of trees and all they do for us. Fun tree activities for kids and adults. Visit with a live raptor. Not the dinosaur kind, though, just so you know. It's the bird kind. And discover all the ways they depend on trees. Complete the Tree Quest Trail to win prizes for kids and adults. Master gardeners and tree advisory volunteers will be on hand to answer questions and demonstrate how to properly plant a tree. That's really important because I didn't properly plant trees when I moved to my house and almost half of them died. Meet Smokey the Bear and learn about safe campfires. Build a bird feeder from ELPIS to take home. Enter a drawing for a gift certificate to purchase a tree. Free drop-in event at Maplewood Nature Center at 2659 East 7th Street, Maplewood, Minnesota, 55119 651 249 2170. www.maplewoodnaturecenter.com.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else want to do the next one?
Our hard to top that. We just gotta go again.
Commissioner Bowman, the voice of Maplewood, is he up for it?
I think we ought to have our new member.
Oh, there we go. I like that.
You are ruthless, man. You are.
It's gonna be hard to top that last one though, so.
As far as orientation.
Alrighty. Phenology Walk, adults and families with children 8+. Fridays, March 8th, April 12th, May 10th, 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Phenology is the study of seasonal natural phenomena in relation to climate, plant life, and animal life. Walk the trails to observe plants and wildlife happenings, track and record all that we see. Option to bring your camera, smartphone with iNaturalist app, or tablet for recording photos or digital records. If rainy, program will be canceled at Maplewood Nature Center, 2659 East 7th Street, Maplewood, Minnesota 55119.
We might have another contender for Mr. Voice of Maplewood there. I think that's pretty good. Excellent, thank you very much. Well, I think that's all we have. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned.